going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's podcast number 150 here. As ever, I'm your host, Jordan Edger, joined us all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Now, it's been a bit of a hot minute since we last sat down and chatted all things NBA. I think it was sort of towards the end of the trade deadline, and obviously there's been quite a bit of news that's gone on in the NBA since. So we thought, we'd just sit down, discuss sort of some of the issues that we're seeing in the NBA at the minute and sort of how we think that they can be fixed as someone that has been watching the NBA now for years and years, and also a little bit of a chat around some of the other things. But before we do get into that, as ever, 150 episodes deep. How are you boys doing? Are you well?
Yeah, not bad. It's been a hot minute, as you said, but we're jumping back into it now. There has been some truly mesmeric shifts in the NBA since we did our last podcast. It's kind of flipped the script on a lot of teams. So there is a lot that we've missed, but we're going to catch up with it now as it builds into the playoffs.
Yeah, all good personally. I mean, we've got our usual twilight recording time at the minute. I'm not sure. I don't know how people do. Some people, I've heard some podcasts record like early in the morning. Couldn't do it personally. I'm more of a night person.
You're not waking up at 4 a.m. and putting your face in some nice walks at 11, getting ready for the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe I should get going on that routine.
I think that's the most viral thing I've potentially ever seen. I think the original clip for that is nearly at 900 million views on Twitter.
Crazy.
On Twitter alone, I say viral. It's not like in mainstream media is what we'll say. But
what's your favourite component of the routine? If you had to take away any part of the routine, what would you take?
It's 4 press-ups he does out on the balcony.
It's with the on top of it as well.
Yeah.
For me, it is the sheer design of that he's got faceless women handing him things. It's full like, do you know where it's just like thank you. That and the clip where he's like, bro, we need to get at least 10,000 or whatever it is for that. It's just like, oh, for God's sake.
I can't believe no one said about the dive. The dive is like, if you saw someone doing that in your local gym in the swimming pool, you'd be like, that's a bit weird. Like a straight up dive into the swimming pool.
I don't think the dive was that bad, was it?
I think that's strange. To be honest. I think that's strange to do in like a gym swimming pool personally. But I do enjoy the breakfast as well. He spent like 5 hours up and he can't cook the breakfast. It's not possible.
Good stuff. There we are. I think it's the other viral thing at the minute that's been going around on the NBA. This is not how I imagined that we were going to start this, but hey, it's the beauty of the beast when you have a podcast that's completely unscripted. It's all of the LeBron songs at the minute. That's been the sort of every time I open up my phone, there's a LeBron song there. So that's going to sort of star its course. But he also did, I don't know if any of you saw this as well today, the interview that he done ESPN talking about just some of the other stuff. And I've seen bits and pieces of the clips, but I've never watched them. I've just seen sort of the highlights that come of them. And I'm not sure if I've been sent-out by quite a few of them that's come out. But it does seem to be that he did say quite a few controversial things or like things that he wasn't expecting LeBron to say.
I haven't seen that.
It sparked up. It's the things I've seen. There was some things about the relationship he had with Kobe and like Jordan now, and it sparked up the age-old debate of players now whether they could do it back then. All the disrespect arguments. Okay. He said some things about Giannis and him just scoring like 250 points a game in the 70s or something ridiculous like that. But
nice.
I feel like there's always on both sides people just the older heads feel like they're not respected for what they did, and the newer players feel like they also get disrespected because it's easy. People say it's easier now than it ever was. So there's never a middle ground with any of those sorts of debates.
No.
I've seen Brian Windhorst caught a bit of shade in that.
Oh, was that a real quote? I thought that was a Sentel quote, so I didn't see the video.
To be fair, neither did I. So we all three.
He may have been Sentel. I don't think it. I mean, there is a video. The Dunk Central. That seems like it should be a legitimate one.
No, yeah, that should be all right then.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But that doesn't seem unlike something he would say.
We'll move into the actual NBA as we hit the 5-minute mark on the podcast for it. I think the main thing I wanted to speak about is that obviously some teams are sort of approaching 72 games roughly played. They're around that 70 game mark now. And I think for the last sort of 5 to 10 games, really, the NBA is becoming, it's in that weird sort of low that we have every single year where, and I think it's natural in the sense of that you get into the end of the regular season as you're approaching the playoffs, and some teams just don't have anything to play for. So they don't really try. They don't really care. They don't care about the product in this sense. And then even some of the competing teams start to get a bit too tactical and try and think of where we can sit guys and rest guys on late notice. And obviously there's the whole thing with the collective bargaining agreement deal that's currently going on with the TV rights and things like that. But I think the biggest advert at the minute for the product is that you're seeing players not play. You're seeing players play reduced minutes. So obviously people are just not wanting to watch the games in general because of it. And I think this is such a big advert for the reduction in games, or at least a reduction in back-to-backs and tighter schedules that we see in the NBA on these like insane road trips that I remember LeBron put not to speak about LeBron again, but like I remember the post that he put out, and it was just sort of an 8-game road schedule that they had, and they played like 8 games in like 14 days or something like that. That was just obscene. And like, how would you boys think about how the NBA can resolve this? Because there's no way they're not having these conversations. Because I think ultimately they know that with the TV deal coming up and how they'll change things, I think they'll all agree internally that probably the 82 games has affected the sort of competitiveness across the league on certain nights, and especially this time of the season. But how would you think that they can sort of circumvent this?
Well, basically, as you say, the main issue with the 82 games is we I think most people can agree that from purely player health and physical standpoint, 82 games in the amount of time they have to play those games in is not. And obviously, people will say people have played these games before, but in the level at which the NBA is played now and the physicality and the fitness of the players, it's just very difficult to go through an 82 game season without picking up injuries, and they want to mitigate those injuries, so obviously players are seeing out. Reducing the games is the problem, obviously, because no commissioner, let's say, because obviously it's owners that will making these decisions at the end of the day, will want to reduce games, because you just the bottom line is you make less money if you reduce the games, because there's less tickets to be bought, less TV rights, games to be sold. So I think that's just not a realistic. That's obviously not a realistic answer. They're not going to reduce the amount of games, I don't think, and I don't think they're going to extend the amount of time in the season either. So I think the only real solution, and I don't think it is a solution, but it's something you could put forward for this, is to do it almost like they used to, and like the NFL does, where you split the divisions further and you have more games played against teams in and around where you are geographically, so that it's not as much of a travel when you're doing these short, back-to-back games, which potentially could help. But to be honest, I just don't think there really is a proper solution to the games, having 82 games, because they're not going to reduce them.
I tend to. They must be thinking about it at the very least. Like, I would say Adam Silver's probably doing a poor job if he's not thinking about it, because it's going to be a hard sell, because, like you said, you make more money from tickets. The owners prefer more games to fill the stadiums and stuff like that. But if the collective attention span and just sort of like relevancy is reducing, you could sell it as in a way that like this could get us back on track. I think a big thing that they need to do, and I don't see why they don't do this really, is to shift the starting point of the season. I think the starting point of the season at the minute doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it's right smack bang in the middle of, I guess, American football season, right? And by the time that the Super Bowl has finished, we now enter into this slog of mindless games, as George mentioned, where there are some teams who are just not competing at all. Whereas this is the only time where I guess they have the full bandwidth of America. I don't know when baseball starts. I know nothing about baseball.
But baseball starts tomorrow, actually.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
But there is a period of time here where literally this is the only profession. Again, I shouldn't say that either, because there's probably hockey. There's probably loads of things.
Yeah, the hockey's going on, but you know what you mean. The three major sports. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That this is the only time where they've got sort of like the attention economy of everyone there. And it's just a time when the quality of the basketball is just so poor because people aren't really trying. They're tired. There's also like legitimate injuries at this stage, to be honest. And I can understand you trying to save it for, like, you're saving up for the playoffs. And I think it'd be cool if there was, like, you know, end of season playoff games in like June or July. I think that would be, you know, like again, pretty big. I know there's going to be other sports during then, but it could capture a lot more, I think, than it does at the minute. So I think a big fit. They should shift the schedule, but you would have to then change the amount of games because it just would cross over, and you've got stuff like the Olympics. Don't think they should send professional basketball players to the Olympics, like NBA players to the Olympics anyway. It's not, yeah. Maybe if you're an international side, you might feel differently about that, but whatever. But I think that's probably the biggest thing they can do is just to get more attention. They need to shift it so it's not crossing over with the NFL as much because it just completely dominates it. And yeah, they should cut the amount of games. Really, everyone knows they should, but whether they do or not,
yeah. I think the arguments I would put forward to that is I think that obviously the NFL, I would actually say that the NFL season's a bit too short. I think it should be a little bit longer, but obviously there's arguments for that in general. The NFL season is what, 17, 18 weeks, whatever it is, right? And then obviously the postseason. I think in terms of the argument as well that I could imagine Adam Silver and sort of other NBA higher ups are having is that if you reduce the amount of games that are being played, you do get an overall better quality of product that can be served and be given, and people would tune into games more. More stars would play because there's less games to be played. So I think the sense of the money, obviously, there's just less of a quantity to it, but the quality should increase in an sense that they can probably argue it in that manner. Obviously, I understand the difficulties that then come of it, of sort of reducing it. And I don't think that is out of the world, by the way. I do see a world in which it does come down.
Because we know there's going to be expansion teams, right? That's pretty much nailed or very, very solid concrete info on that. And all the owners get money due to the fact that there are 2 new teams in there. They get like some sort of payment and stuff like that. So you could sell it that way. You'll lose money on this, but you'll make up money on that. I don't know how the schedule would work with 2 new teams, but they'll figure it out somehow. I just think there's a lot of offshoot, like you say about the players playing. That's a big thing, of course, but I think the greatest sort of like boom periods, if you like, for the NBA are when, I was trying to think about this, it's when there's like a dominant force, like someone you need to take down a little bit, or maybe someone you root for. But the Bulls kind of go against this because I think people probably rooted for the Bulls overall. I don't know, I wasn't alive, so or conscious during this period of time.
I think the best example of
Warriors
is I would say the the Lakers
and the
Celtics from the 80s. I think
like
that's
a rivalry,
the one you look to for a storyline.
Yeah. But the thing is, at the moment, no teams ever go straight. They never go back to the finals. You don't really get back-to-back teams that go to the finals at the minute because they're just so worn out from the entire season. Other sort of thing. You got the Olympics as well, that you don't get the chance to really build these rivalries. Maybe in like a conference type of thing. I can't think of many examples, if I'm honest. There are, the Grizzlies don't like the Warriors, but they played each other once, and that's because the Grizzlies are just kind of aggressive. So it's just, I think it's difficult to build up a team that's like a dominant force to take down, because you kind of need that storyline a little bit, and also these rivalries, interconference anyway, rivalries that we kind of need to be built. So there's lots of different things that I think that could be improved within reducing the amount of games, and you've also. The in-season tournament should have been the way to do that, I think, a little bit, but they just decided.
I mean, for me personally, I think they are, as you say, I just don't think they'll move around the schedule enough to really solve the games issue. But I mean, it is a solution, you're not wrong. But I think what's more likely is they're going to not look at that and more look to trying to find other ways of solving the players sitting out games or teams resting players so they can tank. And I pulled a few of the ideas around. I think one that has been spoken about is to do with the protected picks, and instead getting rid of it being able to be like top 10 protected. So in like 2023, I think it was, I haven't got it written down word for word, but I think the Mavs were in the 10th seed, and they
Yeah,
they made sure they got the 11th seed so that their pick was safe.
Yeah, that was particularly egregious.
Yeah, the idea is if you get rid of sort of the mid-level ones, so if it's like top 4 protected, then that's fine. You can leave those ones, but maybe it stops that sort of middle ground from being a mess. Obviously, top and bottom, you're going to get the disparities there. The other things I've seen is potentially maybe giving more to after the All-Star break, potentially looking at that end of the basketball season to affect the draft lottery. But I do think any of the moves that they do to affect the draft lottery, be it that or making the percentages more even across the board so you're less inclined to go lower, I still think they're basically, everyone knows all of these sound like part fixes that aren't going to solve the issue, because most of the time they don't really want to. They know what the proper issues could be. One of the underlying ones being the amount of games, and they would rather try and find ways around it than going after that, because it is such a problem with the ticket sales and TV rights and all that. The other thing as well, I think with basketball especially, is, and with the NBA especially, being it's historically been such a star-driven league, is the narratives around the NBA at the moment, I just think aren't there, as you say, Lou, with the dominant teams or the dominant players. We look at the stars coming in and we're worried about the vacuum that's going to be there when Steph and LeBron leave. And I think another thing that affects that is the All-Star game, because that is meant to be where you can showcase these players and maybe attract the attention of people who are more casual fans of the NBA. But the All-Star game is just awful at the moment. So that's not serving its purpose. And one thing I've seen floating around to maybe do something with that is, I don't know if you'd know, Louis, but the NHL, well, not NHL, but hockey in general, had the 4 nations, the Canada, the US, Sweden and Finland. Yeah, I've seen a thing going around of maybe doing a USA versus the world for basketball to try and drum that up more. Obviously, the issues with that is I do think hockey fans are a bit more hardcore, your average hockey fan, than your average NBA fan. So I don't know how much people would get behind that. But I do think it is something that would motivate the players more so than what they've got at the moment. So hopefully that could maybe make a difference.
Yeah. All-Star game just comes from the top, doesn't it? It's whoever. It's LeBron doesn't care. LeBron doesn't care about it. They literally turned up this year. It was like, I'm not playing.
Yeah.
Like if those players don't set the tone, then there's just no point in doing it, if I'm honest.
Agreed. And it's the same thing with what you saw with Anthony Edwards, not so much this year, but the last one where he's just like, I'm here to have fun,
left-handed,
seriously. In the skill challenge, just started shooting left-handed and stuff like that. One of the ones, and I agree with you, Lewis, in terms of the draft stuff. So one of the ones I saw was, when I say I agree, I mean as well that there's so many changes that you can potentially make, but there are always a way that the teams will end up sort of figuring out how they can best suit themselves for it. But one of the ones that I did see was that awarding the highest percentage draft pick for the team that loses in the play-ins. So you're almost encouraged to get into the play-in, and then if you lose, that there's a sort of repercussion for it. So it then doesn't encourage your sort of Hornets, your Sixers, your Nets, your Raptors. And like the Raptors at the minute are sitting their whole starters in the fourth quarter. They're just not playing them because they don't want to win the game. So it sort of removes that sense of that, okay, we're not going to win, but we're still going to try and make the play-in. And then if you're not strong enough to win a play-in game to get into the playoffs, you are then rewarded with some form of a little bit more of a bump on a draft pick than you are in comparison to Washington, who just have given up completely again, like as they seem to have done.
They are also bad.
6-7 years.
They
are bad. They are bad.
Yeah.
But again, when you look at it, it's the sense of that they made the trades. They had like Marcus Smart. They got Chris Middleton. Like Chris Middleton, they're just playing like 18 minutes a night because the reason for it is they don't want to play him because they don't really want to win the games because they're probably going to try and trade him in the off season. So again, if you sort of give that sort of slight encouragement to make a play-in series or make a sort of meaningful game towards the postseason, you are then set up to either, oh wow, you've won it and you're in the playoffs, or okay, you've got the best draft pick, lottery odds, so then you can rebuild again next season and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it kills two birds, but there are also going to be ways in which, like we've said, that teams will sort of cotton on and how they can change it and so on and so forth.
But basically what it is you're just trying to beat it through that, or things like the NBA Cup, which they've tried. It's just creating more jeopardy for more games during the season to try and encourage these players to play. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, you need your stars playing, because the way the NBA is reported on, the way the talk shows are centered, it's all around providing that entertainment aspect alongside the sport and just people enjoying the sport fundamentally. And I think the NBA, of any of the sports, even in America, where they obviously lean a lot more towards the entertainment aspect than, for example, we do with football, I think the NBA is the biggest one of those American sports as well that fall to the entertainment side, and it just is because there's so much visibility on the star players.
Just one thing I want to say about the entertainment aspect of it as well. It's more about refereeing, to be honest. The amount of technicals they give for just anyone showing a bit of character or personality is insane, considering what you've just said there, and I agree with you. It needs to be a bit more relaxed. It feels a bit jobsworthy. And fourth quarters need to be fixed. Like late games that are close, they need to be fixed. It should. The fact that it can take that long sometimes.
I think this is just an American. I think that's just an American sport thing, because it's like the ending of an NFL game. They are so long because of the 2-minute warning and then the 2 timeouts that each team has. The ending of an NFL game is awful because they can kneel out and they'll do it. It's just the issues in that sort of sport.
What I would say is the difference, I think, with some of the American sports, like for example the NFL, even when it's coming down to, this is obviously when the games aren't basically decided already with the kneeling. Even with the NFL, even though it takes time, it's like the 1 play or the 2 plays left. There's a lot of, there's so much build up and hype just on that. Whereas in the NBA, sometimes it can get to the point where when it gets to the purposefully fouling constantly, it almost becomes unwatchable. And
to a point, 100%.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't think you can solve that really. So good luck with that. I think. Go on. I was going to go on to another point. So go on if you want to.
No, I think it's just, there's ultimately, there are going to be, like, when you've got a player like Giannis on the court who's not shooting well at the free throw line, you're going to get instances like that where I think it's perfectly normal for a team to be like, we'll absolutely take the fouls on him and move for it. I think the thing that I actually hate is the amount of whistles that are called. But again, that's just the way that the game is refereed. That's going into a whole different ballpark for it.
What I would say with that is, because obviously we are discussing basically how to help improve the NBA here. Not that, we know there's more than anyone else, but
we absolutely
one of the other things discussed, I know, is about the power of referees in games, and I'm going to tie this back beautifully to VAR and football in the Premier League, because everyone gets annoyed at how much power is with the technology and is taken away from the refs, and sometimes you think with certain decisions, why are the refs even there? And I think the replay center in the NBA is something that does lead to more whistles and take more away from the entertainment and the flow of the game. The issue with that obviously is, and the problem we have in the Premier League definitely, is if you're going to put more power in these refs' hands, you have to trust that the level of refereeing is high enough where you want to put it in their hands. And obviously in the Premier League at the moment, we definitely don't have that. But with the NBA referees, maybe it's time to give them a bit more power, let them be a bit more subjective, and maybe some of the whistles go away. It's a tough one, obviously, because then you get the refs screwing games.
Make some mistakes.
Whenever I think of that KD foot in the playoffs and stuff like that. But maybe the playoffs are a different. How they ref them is different to the regular season, because the regular season is much.
Well, usually they give less fouls, to be honest, in the playoffs.
They do, and I would say with the playoffs as well, people are watching them regardless. So because of the playoffs, maybe not the first round. To be fair, the first
playoffs
round still
are fucking great, but
yeah. So that's probably the last thing I'd say. And then if you wanted to dive off the deep end, it would be things like extending the 3-point line to remove the corner threes, so that there's less schemes for corner threes. But I think a lot of the time when I see things with the actual rules of the game, I think sometimes it's not realizing that because things are coached with an inch of their life now and the development of the game, I think it's just got to the point where that is, people look at past times with rose-tinted glasses, and when you go actually look at them, especially like, for example, when you look at the 80s or the 90s and everyone's in the paint, you watch it like, this is potentially even more unwatchable than it is now. Like, obviously, the foul baiting's bad, but
mid-2000s, it's awful.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So I do think it's just more the evolution of the game with those kind of things than having to fundamentally fix something.
Agreed. I think, these are the sort of discussions that I hope are being taken. I actually don't doubt are being they've been having these conversations in NBA head offices for probably years now, and they can't figure out a solution for it. So I think changes ultimately
would have had it sorted.
Stern would have had it done left, right, and center. Stern would not be allowing an all-star game like this. Let's put it like that, right? But in any case, changes are definitely afoot. It's just whenever they do come in. I think that all of the points we've mentioned are great. Adam Silver, I know you're watching, so you just send us a DM over there on Twitter, and we can get chatting about it. This isn't going to be a long podcast, but I thought as well, because we are in this sort of end of March point of view, it is natural to discuss some playoffs. We will have a proper playoff podcast. I think we'll sit down and we'll chat about where we think what's going to happen. But obviously, the play-in is the thing that we should discuss here, is what I'd say. So I do have the playoff picture in front of us. If you're watching this on sort of a Spotify or on YouTube, it will be there as well for you to see. The main thing I want to say is also, I think the play-in is, again, one of the changes that they made a couple of years back. The play-in is an unbelievably good change.
Yeah, great change.
I don't think anyone would disagree. The fact that having that 7, 8, 9, 10 spot all now compete for those play-in spots is great. And the games themselves are arguably some of the best basketball that you'll see all year, because it's that one shot you have to get into it. And I know you've sort of huffed a bit there, Lewis.
I would say, when you say the best basketball, maybe from an entertainment
competitive point of view,
but just actual basketball. I think there's, especially in the West, there's a couple of stinkers that are going to be making the play.
You're joking? Look at the East.
The East is the stinkers. I mean, compared to years prior. Sorry, I think
agreed.
The funny thing is, with the West is that it's so close that it can change so much. But then when I look at the teams and I see the Mavs have still got a chance, the Suns, who have been truly diabolical, are in at the moment. I just think this year, especially the play-ins for the West, especially compared to the rest of the teams in there, are shocking.
See, like when I look at that there, and don't get me wrong, hey, like the beam, and I was all there for it. If you're giving me an option, the Kings can get out of there. I want the Portland Trailblazers in there. Because I can't lie, whenever I watch the Trailblazers and Denny Anfield when he's playing, they are actually trying to win games. The Kings, I've got no idea what their sort of MO is, because they thought, you know what was happening in Chicago for so long? We want some of that. And I can't get on board with sort of the Kings' behaviour. I've got no idea what they're doing. Whereas the Trailblazers, I don't know, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for the Trailblazers this year. So I kind of hope they make it. And then, like you said, everyone thought the Mavs were going to pack it in, and then they have randomly just said, you know what, AD, let's make a run for it, which, again, is all good. Like, it would have been so easy for the Mavs to go, AD, we're going to ice you for the rest of the season and not play. So in this sense of where we're going, I almost feel like we've reached a point where you have to give credit for the Mavs organisation for playing their star player, which is a mental statement, but they've now got... If the Mavs made it, if AD plays, and I know he's sat out in the 3 games they got this week, he's played the first one, we'll set out the second one and play in the third one most likely. I think up until 12 here, I couldn't call who's going to make it between Dallas, Portland, and Sacramento, and even Phoenix to an extent. I don't think the Spurs are not making it. That's regardless. No Wemby, no Fox.
Yeah, that would have been the nice one, because Wemby went down.
Yeah,
I think the thing about the Mavs though, don't you have a slight hint that maybe they've got a guarantee of a number 1 pick? We'll fix Dallas basketball if you give it a go. We'll give you the number 1 pick.
You're going full tin.
Full conspiracy.
Tin foil there, Louis. But, no, I think from that sense, I would like to, like I said, I arguably don't really want to see Phoenix there, because we just know that Phoenix is going to trade KD in the summer. They're not going to do anything. But
I think they're just a business. It's one. I think out of the ones you've mentioned with the talent, I know Bradley Beal's just so far gone, but I just think it's so bad. It's so bad to watch.
Yeah, it is.
To an extent, Bowl's great to watch. So
the issue is, I think KD, obviously, I don't hate on KD. KD's probably one of my favourite players, but I think he's basically decided, I'm moving on. So I don't think he's as enamoured to be playing his hardest, even though he's still playing well.
Have you seen? Did you see the rumours today on that one?
No, but you quickly jump off the stairs. I think Devin Booker and Bud don't particularly get on well either, from what we've seen. No. So I just think it's a bit of a mess over there. And then Bradley Beal's got his no trade.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to talk about trades quickly, but as we just mentioned it on the Suns, there was a little bit floating around the sort of NBA waves today that the Boston Celtics are definitely going to be in the market for Kevin Durant in the offseason. And that, Jaylen Brown isn't as secured as you thought he might be. That's all we'll say there. But anyway, regardless of that, like I said, I think LA and Minnesota, they're both sort of secured. It wouldn't surprise me if the Clippers sort of overtake the Warriors and get in there and the Warriors fall out. Yeah, it really wouldn't. I think the Clippers have, especially the way Kawhi's been playing recently. You got Kawhi, you got Norman Powell, you got Harden. Zubac is playing really well as well. So it wouldn't shock. And I know the Warriors have been very, very good since Jimmy Butler's got there. But obviously, Steph's had those sort of injury issues. And I think if they kind of protect him a little bit. But I think, like I said, I think these three here are all guaranteed. It's just what order they finish in. I don't think the Lakers will fall that far down.
I think
that. Did you not think? I don't think.
I know they've been poor recently. I know they've been poor recently, but I think they'll figure their stuff out and they'll be fine. I think if we're talking, then if we go back onto to this here, we won't go into the full first round. If the play-ins were set as is here, who would you have winning out of the Kings and the Suns and the Clippers and the Timberwolves? We don't need to spend too long on it because we're already over half an hour, but I think it's just an interesting one to discuss.
I'm just going to have to say the Suns, aren't I? Because I could see well the Kings win, but yeah.
I'll tell you what, that game is not going to be. That game is no defense at all. It is like you've got Levine, DeRozan up against Bradley Beal Booker.
I'll just say Kings, to be honest, because I just think the Suns are so out. They're
tasty that is. That would be funny.
I mean, I would say really you say funny. That's tasty, but at the end of the day, whoever's winning out of the Clippers and Timberwolves is beating whoever wins out.
Agreed.
It's simple as that. So it's not that tasty, really. Is
no,
it?
I guess not.
And then out of Clippers Timberwolves, which I think is the Warriors might fall out of it and so on and so forth. I can't lie, and this has been documented this year, and I know that we've had my stuff with the Timberwolves. I'm a massive Anthony Edwards fan. I'm 100%. If Kawhi's playing the way he's playing, the Clippers are winning that game. They're just facts. Yeah, the Clippers are winning that game.
If he's playing.
Yeah, but he's playing 40 minutes a night, Louis, nearly.
We'll see, won't we? We'll see about that. I would agree with you, by the way.
This is probably, and this isn't a hyperbole statement, this is probably the best prepped Kawhi for the last probably 5 years going into a playoff series.
Yeah.
Which is a mental statement, but the man's playing 38 minutes a night and he's playing good basketball.
Actually, I disagree because when they had the COVID break, he probably was he probably wasn't in shape. That's one thing we'll say. We don't know how in shape.
When was COVID? We're talking 5 years here. Was COVID 5 years ago?
2020.
Yeah. So again, since COVID, then I think. And I haven't got the stats in front of me to back this up. This is just me thinking about it. I can't remember a time where we've gone into a playoffs and Kawhi is playing 38 to 40 minutes a night and he's playing pretty much every game apart from back-to-backs.
I'll be honest, I've got no idea. I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember when he was injured.
You're probably right.
I can't back it up. It's the feeling of watching the league and remembering every year talking about bloody Paul George and Kawhi Leonard not being healthy. But I also think in that sense as well, the Clippers James Harden's playing well. Norman Powell's just coming back from injury, but he was playing well prior. Kawhi's playing great. Zubac is playing great. And they've got other little role players in and around them that are doing bits. Whereas the Timberwolves, if you think I'm fucking betting on Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert come a serious game, I never will. That's it for me.
7-3 for the Timberwolves and loss of the
God's sake, man.
Timberwolves to be fair, Randle is the one. It's Randle.
Julius Randle in the playoffs. It somehow makes Rudy Gobert look good in the playoffs, is what we will say there.
Well, it's because I think it's because Randle's got highs and Gobert doesn't really. Do you know what I mean? Like you've seen Randle can have himself a game and then he just he lets you down. I will say I think whoever wins out of these two playing the Rockets, I'm not gonna lie, I might fancy the 7th seed a little bit.
I am picking whoever gets out of the play-ins. I don't care. I'm picking the other people who are actually already in because I really think that's the disparity in the West.
Interesting. The
So
Rockets.
I know that there are question marks, and that's probably part of the reason why we're talking about narrative this season over the teams that have done quite well this season, minus obviously like the Celtics. But I still think just going off what I've seen, I just don't trust any of the playing teams.
Oh no, I can't lie, mate. If the Clippers make this, if it's the Timberwolves,
Yeah.
no. If the Clippers win that, I'm 100% taking the Clippers to beat the Rockets.
Fair enough.
I would 100. Whatever team comes here and plays the Thunder, they're getting 4-0. They're getting nilled. I don't care if it's KD. KD's not giving them one. They're getting nilled in that series against the Thunder. So that's regardless. I think the Timberwolves would put up a fight but lose to the Rockets. I think the Clippers beat the Rockets in a 7-game series.
To be honest, now I'm thinking about it and looking through, depending on where the Lakers come in the standings, I think my bracket on the West might be really bloody boring this year.
Potentially could be. It really could be.
And I don't just mean that by like 1-2. I just think the favourite is going to be quite obvious as you go through.
Yeah, I've been also well documented all year, but I'm not buying Thunder stocks when it actually matters. I think they'll absolutely bang in the first round, potentially in the second round. But I think if they come up against a serious organisation, I think Shea's not going to get anywhere near the amount of free throw calls that he gets every time.
What is the serious organisation?
No, but do you know what I mean? Like proper, the Nuggets. I'll tell you what. The Nuggets, even the Lakers and the Warriors in these serious situations.
The Lakers ain't worrying me.
Brother, we can say what we want about it. You can say what you want about it. When it gets to it and you're in a crunch time 7-game series, and I'm looking at Luka Doncic and LeBron James, I'm looking at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He can wear as many fur coats as he wants. Like, it's not really going to set me up thinking he's going to go and dominate the 7-game.
The problem with that is usually when you're doing that argument, it's because they're close games. I think most games the Thunder are going to be playing in the playoffs are not going to be close games. That's the issue. I personally think the Thunder are going to the finals unless you get, and it is possible, the most Herculean series you've ever seen from either Luka and LeBron or Jokic and Jamal Murray. But I think the chances of that happening compared to the consistency of the Thunder is quite low. So that's why I would be
agreed. I think ultimately, realistically speaking, and the Lakers and the Warriors could put up some stuff against them. And I know we can digress.
No, I don't think the Warriors can. I think the Warriors.
I don't mind the Warriors actually. There's parts of me that prefer the Warriors to the Lakers.
Against the Thunder specifically is what I'm saying. I just think the Warriors are done.
And we'll have those conversations a bit more in depth when we sit down. But I think if you're ultimately speaking about the Thunder and the Nuggets, and I'm sitting there at 7 games, Jokic is the best player on that court by an absolute country mile. And I'll always go with that.
The problem is the Thunder, and obviously a full squad matters less in the playoffs, but I just think the Thunder's team as a whole is so much better than the Nuggets. It really has to be just a Herculean effort.
Yeah, I completely agree. I agree with that, but in the same sense, the Nuggets are winners. And that's where I'm always going to... You win it until you win it. And that's where it is for.
It's fair enough. They have to prove it.
They did absolutely bottle the Game 7 against the Timberwolves last season, so that's not great.
True.
But
but Lewis, that means they've learned from that. That means they've learned from that, and they're not going to do it again.
That's the narrative you can run. Yeah.
Murray wasn't right then. To be fair, we could say Murray's a bit better in. Well, he had a couple of good games. To be fair, I don't know how.
I expect a good Jamal Murray in this playoffs. But,
agreed.
I'm
actually getting so excited.
Till the end of the season.
I'm getting just talking about playoff basketball. Playoffs are the best. I can't wait for it.
Can I ask a quick one? And I'm not sure if you were about to go deep into the East here, to be honest. Yeah. So I'm sorry if I've undercut that, but
no, I was going to move to the East. So yeah,
fair enough. I was genuinely just going to ask: do you actually think there's a chance the Cavs beat the Celtics?
No.
No.
Not at all. There's no chance.
Obviously, there's a chance.
There's a chance. Yes, Louis. There's a chance United could win the league next year. It doesn't mean they're going to do it.
This could be me being incredibly disrespectful, to be honest. But I think the chances the Cavs beat the Celtics, I would give the same amount of chance that the Lakers or the Nuggets upset the Thunder.
Well, that's not how disrespectful. In my head, what you've just said.
It's completely viable.
I just think the Celtics are overwhelming favourites.
I mean, the Cavs have had a bit of a bad run. I think I do think there's a world. I really do think there's a world where I don't know what's going on with Porzingis. It seems to be all over the place. Jaylen Brown's not looking hot. You'd say Jason Tatum's had a great season, by the way, just to put it out there.
Yeah,
he does.
Jaylen Brown's not so much, and as you've alluded to, so the Cavs they've got their bona fide man. Would if you're going toe to toe, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, I'd probably take Tatum. But there's games
Tatum
where there will
every
be
day of the week.
Yeah, but there's games where there's not.
There
is going to be games where Donovan Mitchell is better.
Yeah,
there is just going to be.
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. Head to head, I'm not so sure. But I will say Donovan Mitchell has a very, very good playoff repertoire in terms of like his stats and his records in those games. So I'd give him a fighting chance, obviously, yeah. But
they have to make it there, to be fair. But yeah,
and this is the last year, and I said this. I've said this about the Cavs already this regular season as well. Don't get me wrong, but I've always said that the Cavs are sort of that regular season team, and then comes to playoffs, you don't really know what to expect because every single night, I could open up a Cavs box score and see Donovan Mitchell's got 35 points one night, and then he's got like 12, and he's just been terrible. And that's the regular season, and granted, in the playoffs, it is a completely different beast. But unfortunately, I can't look at this Cavs team and go, yes, they are the best team in the East, unquestioned. No doubt in my mind. The East is pretty weak, granted, because I don't think anyone's taking the Bucks seriously at the minute. And obviously, Dame's just had that issue where he's on blood thinners now and so on and so forth. So it looks like it's just going to be another sort of pitiful end, unfortunately, for the Giannis and the Bucks. Obviously, he was injured with Middleton last year, and they've just had a few things wrong since he had that sort of euphoric title charge and was unbelievable that year. And I think the Knicks are just not in a spot where they don't seem to be as strong to me as they were this time last year. I think that's a fair assessment, even with Karl Anthony Towns on them now.
I don't know what it is with the Knicks. It's strange. I think everyone feels like they should be better than they are as a unit, and maybe
Mikal Bridges, to be fair. So that's probably
that's what I mean. So I don't think it'll be. It's hard. I've said nothing for about 10 seconds. My point, but it's tough because I don't think you can just suddenly, bloody Jokic said in his interview, you can't just flip a switch and change the type of basketball team you are. But when you do have the roster that the Knicks have, there is the ability for them to turn it on maybe and go on a bit of a run and upset someone.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't really want to go into it too far. I think the Knicks, obviously, when they get Bronson back, and Tibbs plays Tibbs minutes, and they're not going to go that deep in any case. There is chances MSG's bouncing. There's 100% like a bit there where it will go. I think when we look at the East for this, there's no real sort of issues with Miami. They are going to make it. No one else is going to challenge. Toronto don't want to make it because they're not even playing their main guys in the fourth quarter and so on and so forth. And the rest of these teams have already shut their seasons down. I think when you look in this sort of bracket then, I think Chicago have been impressive recently, and Kobe White has been unbelievable the last sort of week and a half. But I do think Miami in this one-off game will win that. I'm pretty confident. Like Wiggins has looked really good in the games that he's played. Tyler Hero and Bam that.
If you ask me now, I'd say that the Bulls. Honestly, I think that Miami, the whole vibes.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm purely going off vibes here, which is
you two both hit the Bulls.
Yeah,
I just think the vibes of Miami are just in the absolute gutter. So I'd just go with it.
Ban looks
wow, I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, it's a coin toss. I don't really care that much. But...
We'll see what you say when we do our bracket. We will see what you say when we do our brackets. I think that game will be a putrid watch. Don't get me wrong. There is no game
like the Orlando Magic down there, mate. So,
brother, the Magic are getting a bad. I have a little soft spot for the Orlando Magic. Don't get me wrong, but the Magic are getting a bad rep. Okay, Banchero has been balling out. Franz Wagner is obviously Franz. He was very good at the start of the season, midway through, and then he's tailed off a little bit. I think the Magic beat the Hawks. I really do. I think Banchero and Wagner are probably the best. Trae Young's the second best player on the court, but
it's a shame because if it wasn't as top heavy as it is the East, I actually, when I look at the Magic, I think they are a team that could upset someone on their day, or like for a few games in the series they could maybe win one or two that would swing it in their favor. But just because of how lopsided the East is, it's just not happening.
I could see the Magic causing an upset to like New York or Indiana, like in that sense. Whereas I wouldn't actually see it that much of an upset if the Magic beat the Pacers. I really wouldn't. But the Knicks would be an upset, for example.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah.
They just need to fix the offense. They need to go. Obviously, Suggs being out won't help that as well. Like, I could see what you mean with an upset if they had Suggs there, but with no Suggs, I really struggle to see that personally.
No, I think if we go down this route, so if we say, if we say Chicago are going to win that game, and we say that Orlando are going to win that game, then I think, would we both agree that Orlando beat whoever they play out of Chicago and Miami?
Well, it would be the Hawks playing then, wouldn't it? If we
true. Sorry, Orlando.
But yeah, to answer your question, I would
yeah. We'll go for those top two because
so whoever wins that game is going to be right, regardless of Miami and Chicago from the loser for. Mm-hmm. And then unfortunately, unlike this one where I feel the Clippers would have a chance against the Rockets, I just think the Celtics and the Cavs are just going to win either 4-0 or 4-1. Like, they're just going to get the job done. There's no one sees the shocker there. That would be, I mean, if Adam Silver does want to, get the ratings up a little bit, that would be your shocker that would go through. And the rest we'll talk about when we do our full-on playoff stuff. But
yeah, that Pistons series could be tasty. I'm saying that. But Pacers Bucks is obviously always quite fun, but yeah.
Pacers Bucks will be great. And just because of the stuff about Giannis's game ball and stuff like that, there's always a little bit of edge there. And don't get me wrong, New York, Detroit, that's great as well. Like,
roll your sleeves up. Let's do some hard work.
Tips for your Detroit team is there's going to be elbows out. Right, there's no flopping about. That's going to be a grit and grind series. And there's playoff basketball is just great as it is. I can't wait for it to come back around. It's about 2 weeks out from the point where we're recording this. So probably in a week's time, once we've seen the NBA sort of shuffle down the rest of the games and sort of we know where the lies and the standings are going to be a bit more, we'll sit down, we'll do our own bracket, we'll do our combined bracket and we'll go from there. And obviously every year we get it bang on right and we never ever get it wrong and we always get every upset correctly predicted. So that'll be fun to do. Before we do wrap this one up, is there anything you boys wanted to chat about that we haven't?
No, but now you have brought up the playoffs and thinking back to last year, I think my predictions were probably an absolute car crash looking back. So I might go and have a look and see how they were.
Yeah, I don't think we did too well on the predictions last year is what we'll say. And I think when we sit down and we look at our regular season stuff and our over-unders, I think our over-unders this year have done pretty well, apart from the fact that we did have Detroit going under. So, but, we can sort of move past that one and go from there. Guys, thank you very much for listening. If this is your first time, it'd help if I can get it out. If this is your first time watching us or listening to us, please drop us a like on the video or a like on the podcast platform that you're watching and a sub to us over here on YouTube. It really would mean the world to us. I think that will do it. We're going to catch you in about 2 weeks' time for the playoffs like we've mentioned. And yeah, thank you very much for watching and peace.